Welcome to More Tales with the Story Weaver. The story that I'm going to share with you today has been with us since time out of mind. It is an ancient tale about King Solomon. It's a story that has been passed from grandparent to grandchild, from parent to child, from friend to friend, since our history began. Now, many people are familiar with stories of King Solomon. After all, he was the king that commanded that a child be cut in half to answer the need of two mothers. And for this, he was considered wise, for this and for many other reasons. Now, King Solomon, there are also many stories about King Solomon's magic ring. In fact, in the Arthurian tales of King Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, there is mention of a quest for King Solomon's magic ring. The story that I share with you today is how that ring came into being. King Solomon and his magic ring. King Solomon had amongst his guard his oldest and closest friend, Benaiah. They had been together since they were boys, and Benaiah was now the captain of King Solomon's guard. And no matter what King Solomon asked of him, Benaiah would do. However, one day, King Solomon overheard Benaiah bragging to the other members of the guard about how he, Benaiah, no matter what it was King Solomon asked, he, Benaiah, could get it done. Well, this disturbed King Solomon. He was worried that Benaiah was becoming too proud, was becoming a braggart, and thought it was time that he perhaps taught him a lesson. And so King Solomon asked Benaiah to come to his throne. "Ah, Your Majesty, yes, sire, what may I do for you now?" "Benaiah," said King Solomon, "I have heard of a ring, a magic ring, a ring that if a happy man looks at it, he becomes sad. And if a sad man looks at it, he becomes happy. I would have that ring." "Oh, of course, Your Majesty," says Benaiah. "I will get it for you. I will go right now and get it for you." Now, Benaiah, it may be difficult to find. I will give you 6 months to find me this ring. "Oh, Your Majesty, I will find it in no time." And off Benaiah went, with King Solomon had a twinkle in his eye, for he knew that no such ring existed. Benaiah went out into the marketplace of the great city of Jerusalem, and there he asked every jeweler, every goldsmith, every silversmith about this ring, this magic ring. None had ever even heard of it. So Benaiah had to go beyond the walls of Jerusalem, where the caravans camped outside, caravans that came from all corners of the world. And he asked each and every caravaneer about that magic ring. None had ever heard of it. So Benaiah had to go out into the countryside and throughout the country of Israel, to every village, every town, every city, asking for that magic ring, that ring where if a happy man looked at it, he became sad. And a sad man looked at it, he became happy. No one had heard of this ring. Benaiah came to the borders of the country. He went into Syria and Mesopotamia looking for this ring. None had heard of it. Finally, the 6 months was almost up. Benaiah returned to Jerusalem with but 1 day left for his quest. And he thought, well, what would it hurt to ask one more time? So as he passed through the marketplace, he again asked every jeweler, every goldsmith, every silversmith for that magic ring. And as they had every single time, no one knew, had ever heard of that ring. And then Benaiah saw a street urchin, a dirty little half-naked boy with a string of cheap gold and silver bands around his neck. What would it hurt? "Child," said Benaiah, "have you heard of a magic ring? A ring that, if a happy man looks at it, he becomes sad. And if a sad man looks at it, he becomes happy." "No, sir, I've never heard of such a ring." "Oh, I have heard of such a ring," came an old voice from inside the shop. It was the street urchin's grandfather, a jeweler. Come, come, he says, I can make you such a ring. You can? Oh, indeed, said the old man. And he took a plain, cheap gold band and inscribed very carefully in it 3 letters, Gimel, Zayin, Yod, G-Z-Y in Hebrew. And it meant Gam Zai Ya'avor. And when Benaiah looked at that ring, his face lit up. This is it, he says. This is the ring I have sought these many months. This is the ring my majesty bade me find for him. Oh, thank you, 1,000 thank yous, good sir. And Benaiah turned and he ran to the palace and he burst into the throne room where Solomon was entertaining his favorite courtiers with fine food and music and entertainment. Everyone was having a wonderful time and King Solomon was very happy when he saw Benaiah. He said, Benaiah, you've returned, my friend. I'm so sorry. Oh, your majesty, I've returned, said Benaiah, and I have the magic ring. You do? Yes, here, your majesty. And King Solomon took that plain, cheap gold band from Benaiah, and he looked at those letters inscribed inside. Gimel, Zayin, Yud. His face fell. Aye, indeed, Benaiah, this is the ring which I had you seek. Here. And he removed the great ruby ring that had always been on his finger and gave it to Benaiah for his own. And he replaced it with that simple gold band, with that simple saying on it, Gam Zai Ya'avor, a saying which he would look at every day for the rest of his life, and perhaps was part of the reason why he was known as such a wise king. For every day he reminded himself, Gam Zai Ya'avor. This too shall pass.